So quick land acknowledgement. As always, it's really important for us to be understanding of the land that we're on. The Civil Rights Office would like to acknowledge the Dena'ina people in whose traditional lands we gather in Anchorage. We also acknowledge all Indigenous people of Alaska. Thank you for your past, present stewardship of the waters, plants, animals of this place. Thank you. And of course, for those who are unaware, Dena'ina is located right here in the state of Alaska. So really quick, if folks wouldn't mind just putting in the chat their name, their organization, their title, and email if you're interested. And then if you happen to be a DBE, a disadvantaged business enterprise firm, or an ACDBE, which is an airport concession disadvantaged business enterprise firm. If you happen to be one of those, please put that in the chat. But of course, everybody, if you wouldn't mind just giving a quick introduction, that way we're have a good sense of who is in the room. And while y'all are doing that, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Zhenya Peterson. Or I go by Z, and I'm the program manager here in the office for the DBE program. And with us, we have Brittany Hoffert. Brittany is the support services specialist. And for folks who might not have met Brittany yet, she's been in the Civil Rights Office for quite some time, but she is new to this role specifically. So I'm super excited to have her. And then we also have Jody King, and Jody will introduce herself when she's speaking, but Jody is with the Alaska Apex Accelerator, and we're very
manager, email, Tony@minterdevelopmentcorp.com.
Sounds good. Tony, I'm going to mute you if you don't mind. So yeah, thanks all for joining us, and let's move on. So quick safety moments, just for folks, because we're in this virtual space. Couple things as a reminder: check your surroundings, ensure that your workplace is free of tripping hazards, spills, or anything that could cause an accident. Please stay hydrated. It's really important. We're getting to the summer season. We gotta have really good skin. We gotta look good. And follow ergonomic practices. So whatever you need to do to make sure that you're not straining your body or your eyes. And be mindful of your emergency exits. Yeah, let's get started. Couple of things for Zoom, if you're unaware of how to use Zoom properly. If you see on your right-hand side or the left-hand side of your screen, there's a little microphone option. If you see a red line going through it, that means you're muted. If you do not, then that means you're unmuted. If you can, please make sure you're muted throughout the presentation until it's time to ask questions. And if you do have a question, please put it in the chat, and myself or Brittany will bring it up to Jody when they're speaking, or Jody might stop and actually answer that question themselves. Next to the microphone option is the video. So again, if you see a little slash going through the video, that means you're not sharing your video at the moment. But if you see the video without the red slash going through it, then you are sharing your video. Please use the chat box. It's there for questions. If you want to just give Jody, like, hey, you're doing a great job or something, that's awesome too. And of course, all of you just put in your introduction information into the chat. And if you haven't done so, please do so. And if you really like something that Jody's saying or you have a reaction, go ahead and use the react button. It kind of gives Jody a heads up like, oh, yep, you're doing great, you're doing awesome. Or you agree with something, and Jody will appreciate that as well. And code of conduct. So again, please feel free to ask questions in the chats. And if you do want to raise your hand, you can also do that in Zoom. Keep yourself muted unless you're speaking. Be respectful, be mindful of your background, and please stay engaged. And I'm not going to go too much into this agenda because we're going through it right now, but as soon as Jody's presentation starts, they will actually share their screen. And then as a quick overview, as always, where is the Civil Rights Office? We are located in the state of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities under the Equal Employment Civil Rights section. And here's us. And we do actually have 11 employees. I apologize. At the time of this writing of this presentation, I thought we were going to hire one more person. It did not work out. So we're back down to 11 employees. And while we are located in Anchorage, we are statewide. Yeah, and so again, this is me. This is my title, and this is what I do. And then here's Brittany, their title and what she does. And quick overview, the purpose of these quarterly trainings, again, is to ensure that part of our, this is the BDO, Business Development Office, within the DBE program, ACDB program. We want to ensure that we're consistently providing trainings and opportunities for our certified firms and, of course, anybody from this world to keep learning and keep engaging in topics that, of course, are relevant to you, could be helpful towards your work. And of course, we're super excited to always be partnering with Jody over at the Alaska Apex Accelerator. And this is where I pause. I am going to stop sharing my screen, Jody, and you can go ahead and share.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I'm pretty excited about this presentation. I've done a lot of presentations on the federal prevailing wage world of Davis-Bacon Act. It's Davis-Bacon and related activities, DBRA. And this is the first time that I've got to do a presentation on the Little Davis-Bacon, or better known as pamphlet number 600 or PAM 600, which is the minimum rates of pay for laborers and mechanics for public contracts within the state of Alaska. We have a lot of great stuff to go over. Feel free to get those questions listed. Z, I'm not going to monitor the chat box this time. If we get questions, feel free to jump in and just let me know. And I don't mind tackling them as we go through.
Sounds good.
And we'll go from there. Okay. So let's see, what are we going to be talking about? Well, real quick, as Z mentioned, I am the assistant director with the Alaska Apex Accelerator. Back in the day, we used to be known as Alaska Procurement Technical Alaska Procurement Technical Assistance Center, or PTAC. We're supposed to no longer use that word, but I just kind of like throwing it out there. But what we do in a nutshell is we provide free assistance with all aspects of government contracting from cradle to grave, start to finish, for federal, state, and local purchasing or contracting activity. We provide free one-on-one appointments and do free workshops, as the one we are doing this morning. Here is our website here, the apexalaska.org. If you have offices in other state locations, or thinking of going after contracts in a different location, diversifying that geographic region, feel free to check out our national association, the napex.us, to find those other areas. Or you can even go to the Department of Defense Office of Small Business Programs, which is the apexaccelerators.us, this bottom, and find out more about that program. If you are thinking of diversifying or looking at work in other states, I really encourage you to check out those websites, find out what those apexes are doing as well. While we all have that focus on federal procurement, each one of us are kind of experts on what's going on in our own backyard, so to speak, regarding state and local contracting. So I just like to give everybody that information. So here's what we're going to talk about today, and it's a lot. Prevailing wage overview, definitions, statutes. I promise we won't spend a lot of time on statutes, but I like giving everybody the references. Why is it required? When does it apply and not apply? And then just a quick nod at the federal Davis-Bacon and related acts of DBRA, just in one screen real quick. And then we're going to kind of go into the breaking down of the pamphlet 600. We're going to kind of look at the categories, how to read it. We're going to talk about the public construction process. And then we're going to talk about registering in My Alaska, which kind of ties under this public construction process. And then we're going to go into submitting certified payroll, notice of project completion, and kind of a brief discussion on Title 36 enforcement. So just real quick, as a reminder, there's a lot of words used for what we're going to be talking about. So prevailing wage, PAM 600, Little Davis-Bacon, Title 36, and we'll kind of see why we have all of those that apply to all the same thing as we go through this morning. So what is a prevailing wage? It is the prevailing wage, and this I am going to read, make sure I get it all correct. The prevailing wage rate is defined as the average wage paid to similarly employed workers in a specific occupation in the area of an intended employment. Now, this is a very broad description, but basically that prevailing wage is going to establish the minimum hourly rate plus fringe benefits and other types of pay related to that labor category. And these are mandatory for all levels of contractors working on a public contract. And by public, we mean governmental in essence, whether we're talking state or federal, in the case of the Davis-Bacon, as opposed to commercial residential contracts. The purpose for prevailing wage laws to ensure that workers on public projects are paid fairly and that contractors are not undercounting local wages. How it's determined: regulatory agencies like the U.S. Department of Labor determine prevailing wage rates based on data from similar projects in the area, often using union wage rates as a reference. So the Federal Department of Labor establishes on a national level for federal contracts. And then we have the State of Alaska Department of Labor that then establishes those prevailing wage rates for within the state of Alaska. It applies to, so again, prevailing wage requirements typically apply to contractors and subcontractors on projects funded by federal, state, or local government activities. So again, we're going to use that term public construction. For calculation, the prevailing wage includes not just the basic hourly rate, but also any fringe benefits like health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off, which are also part of the average wage. And so this is the part that most people don't think about, are those fringe benefits. So what is the prevailing wage for construction in Alaska? So here you can see, this is where we run into the Title 36 Public Contracts Wage and Hour Administration Pamphlet 400. So we're actually going to have two different pamphlets that we're going to be referring through this morning. The PAM 400, which is the statute regulations, kind of summarizes it, pulls it directly from the Alaska Administrative Code, and provides information specifically to the construction. I've got the link here. It is a document that you should be very familiar with if you are doing Alaska construction projects that are public contracts, construction contracts, whether for the state of Alaska, the Department of Transportation, any state department, or even the municipality of Anchorage, the Mat-Su Borough, any of the other that fall under applicability of Alaska state statute. So section 3605.10, a contractor or subcontractor who performs work on a public construction contract in the state, and here next, shall pay not less than the current prevailing wage rate of wages for work on a similar nature in the region in which the work is done. The current prevailing wage rate of wages is that contained in the latest determination of prevailing rate of wages issued by the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And there's a timeline. So they do update these wages, I believe, semi-annually. So you want to make sure that when you are looking at a bid document, you are using the most recent and the most applicable version of the PAM 600 when you are putting those prices together. Now, while they might update those semi-annually, it doesn't mean every single wage category is updated, just the ones that they feel are due or applicable based on their determining factors. So again, PAM 400 gives us that administrative overlook and it becomes the statutory guidance. And then PAM 600 is the actual wage rate. And we'll get into that in just a second. So what is prevailing wage for construction in Alaska? Again, we have 8 AAC, which is the Alaska Administrative Code, which establishes the prevailing wage rate, means the total of the basic hourly rate, health and welfare, pension, legal service, apprentice traineeship, training programs, and other fringe benefits which inure the benefit of the worker as published by the department. All right, so fringe benefits are applied, and this is just a good little, need an exclamation on top of my hard hat, that fringe benefits are applied to base hours, not overtime. So it's calculated like for our base hourly rate plus the fringe that is calculated up under that straight time, those 40 hours. However, if you're doing 410s or 5/8, however, your definition of a daily workspace has been determined between you and your employer for establishing that. Fringe benefits may be paid directly on paycheck as gross wages. They can be set into a union trust fund, or they can be paid through an approved benefit plan. Most everything that we're going to be talking about is going to assume this first bullet, that it's fringe benefits are added to your base hourly rate and just included as a dollar amount on those paychecks. For companies that do provide these approved benefit plans, your insurance provider should be able to help you break down your benefits to ensure that you are meeting that minimum hourly rate. These prevailing wages are the least amount that you can legally pay to meet contract compliance for public contracts in the state of Alaska. You are always welcome to pay more, but you cannot pay less. And again, two factors, both the hourly rate and those fringe benefits. Now, overtime is simply 1.5 times base hour. It does not include your fringe. So your fringe is just up to that for that 40-hour straight time. However you calculate it, it does not get added to any overtime. All right, when does it apply? So nice little short list. It applies to public projects as opposed to not apply, which again, we kind of mentioned is that commercial or residential projects. And I have a little caveat saying not grant funded. So we do have authorities within the state like the Alaska Housing Authority, and these housing authorities do receive grant funds from both federal and state activities. And depending on the grants, whether they're from the Department of Labor or from HUD, which is that Housing and Urban Development, those, especially those federal grants, may have additional requirements that tag this as prevailing wages do apply, prevailing wages do not apply. So I'm going to kind of leave this little caveat hanging over there. So in other words, really as you are bidding on contracts, if it's an authority or one other area that's paid through grant recipients, they should have within the language of the solicitation, that bid package, whether Davis-Bacon or Little Davis-Bacon is applicable. All right, it applies to your direct labor. As opposed to, and we'll get down here, and it also applies to those foremen who pick up tools for more than just demonstration. So as we can see over in the doesn't apply, I'm going to kind of jump. It doesn't apply to supervisors, foremen, superintendents, or owners. However, if you have your shift foreman who is filling in because somebody had an emergency, had to go pick up a sick kid, and the moment they begin picking up tools and acting as an individual in that labor position, if that Davis-Bacon or Little Davis-Bacon or the title, the PAM 600 prevailing wage is higher than their base pay as a foreman, you need to make sure that you are capturing that time and paying them at that higher rate. So that part is critical. It's kind of a little caveat for those that are in that leadership oversight position. If they're picking up a tool just to demonstrate, to say, no, hey, if you do it this way, it's a lot easier or safer, great, fine. That's part of that managing of their team. But the moment they actually are putting time in, to replace those missing persons or to help move a project along, you need to be aware of that. They should be marking their timesheet. And if they baseline pay is higher than the prevailing wage, great, but those hours where they are acting as that labor position, it really should be notated just for the purpose of should you have someone on site kind of doing the wage and hour investigation or enforcement team, then you just have those for audit purposes. It's a good practice. Seems like a pain when everybody's on the job and busy, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so pretty simple when it applies, direct labor, public projects. What doesn't apply, again, we kind of mentioned that commercial or residential projects, unless there's that underlying grant funding in there. It doesn't apply to bona fide material suppliers performing mere delivery and common carriers, scale house workers, air balancing, when strictly air balancing. And I'll be honest, I pulled some of this list from the Department of Labor website for the state. And to me, the only thing I could picture, I'm writing this down, the air balancing is like when they're loading helicopters to move construction materials out to remote areas. Very specific while they're loading that for flight. Utility locators, concrete slump testers, compaction testers, or inspectors, supervisors, foremen, superintendents, owners, or engineers, architect, or archaeologist. So in this case, having that prevailing wage using that PAM 600 isn't necessarily applicable for those levels of labor. Now, here's our nod, just to kind of let you know the history of why the state here, we call it Little Davis-Bacon, because the Davis-Bacon Act applies to federal contracts. If you're curious about more, the intent is the same, the thought process, the developing of the prevailing wages, all of that follows as kind of a standard impact. But I just wanted to give you this website if you're interested in that. And again, because who knows, you might be working on that grant project, grant or commercial project or residential project that has those grant funds, as in the Housing Authority, and they might refer it. So I just wanted to give this to you for your reference. Phew, okay, let's talk about PAM 600. So this is really the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about today. And you can see in the upper right-hand corner, here is the document itself. If you are in the construction industry, you should have the most current editions of PAM 400 and 600 on your computer, ready to go at your fingertips. So you can see that, again, you have to pay attention when you're looking at this. You can pull all of the older editions, older issues, and they seem to be pretty good about changing the photo as they're issuing to kind of help give you that visual difference. But what you're looking at is this effective date. So you can see this one was effective April 1st, 2025. It's issue 50, pamphlet 600, title 36, public contracts, which is under AS 3605, so Department of Labor. Here is the link for this itself. All right. So in 3605.005, this chapter applies to only to public construction contracts that exceed 25,000. So here is your starting threshold for where this kicks in, the applicability of those prevailing wages kick in. On the federal level, that threshold is $2,000 because of the Davis-Bacon and Related Activities Act. So something we're going to talk about this threshold again when we talk about change orders. So wage rates and specifications and contracts for public use. Now, I'm not going to read you all this, but I just want to kind of pull out this highlighted. A public construction contract under this section must contain provisions that, one, the contractor or subcontractors of the contractor shall pay all employees unconditionally and not less than once a week. So this is requirement one. Wages may not be less than those stated in the advertised specifications, regardless of the contractual relationship between contractor, subcontractor, and laborers, mechanics, or field surveyors. The scale of wages to be paid shall be posted by the contract in a prominent and easily accessible place at the site of work. And you can bet that is going to be looked at. That is for both the federal Davis-Bacon and the PAM 600 or Little Davis-Bacon, having those notifications posted that this particular project that you're working on is subject to these prevailing wages. All right, one thing about PAM 600 is that there are locations designation. We have for north and south. Pretty simplistic. So we will see when you're looking at the titles, it will actually say north, south, and here is that dividing line. It's roughly right around Toke, that latitude north 63. So what we can see S as in the numbers here is this south area, and north is interior, everything north of Toke. And like I said, that cuts in just shy of. But I do just wanted to pull this out just to let you know that when you are looking at these, make sure that even if most of your projects are in, let's just say the Anchorage area, Kenai Borough, that South Alaska, that if you're suddenly doing a project north of, that you are making sure that you are using those applicable wage rates. The titles are the same. There's just that pay differentiator based on location. So apprentice rates. Apprentice rates at less than the minimum prevailing wage may be paid to apprentices according to an apprenticeship program which has been registered and approved by the Commissioner of the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development in writing or in accordance with a bona fide apprenticeship program registered with the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship Training. So yes, depending on the apprenticeship program specific for that labor category, again, they do have to be approved programs. You do have to have that notification that you have apprenticeships in these approved programs, and that will be noted on the certified payroll, which we talked about. Any employee listed on a payroll at an apprenticeship wage rate who is not registered in one of these as written above shall be paid the full journeyman prevailing wage, minimum wage in that work classification. So wage rates are based on prevailing crew makeup practices in Alaska and apply to work performed regardless of whether the quality of the work performed by the employee or the titles or classifications which may be assigned. All right, so just yes, there are apprenticeship programs. Apprentices can be paid a lesser rate, but you can't just arbitrarily say, well, you're an apprentice, congrats, we're going to only pay you 25%. It has to be based on that apprenticeship program. And again, just a reminder, those apprenticeship programs must be properly registered in their craft. Here's the Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship Training Program. Here's a phone number if you have questions on that or you want to verify. Apprentices are entitled to full fringe benefits unless stated otherwise in their apprenticeship standards. They're paid a percentage of that published rate, and they're entitled to journeyman rate when unregistered, out of ratio, or unsupervised. Now, I was in the State Department of Labor wage and hour training last week, and I am fairly confident that they mentioned that the allowed ratio for the state of Alaska is a 1-to-1, one apprentice per one journeyman. And I asterisked it because I don't necessarily want you to quote that without verifying. Z, if you have a comment on that, feel free to jump in. But again, so pay attention to that relationship on that ratio. So if you suddenly have one journeyman and multiple, more than one apprenticeship, there might be a flag that they're going to look into making sure that that ratio is met. Otherwise, suddenly you owe someone back pay. And that is not a circumstance you want to get involved with, especially if the Department of Labor is ensuring that someone is getting that full pay to which they are entitled. So Pamphlet 600, this is kind of what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward, a little bit of information, table of contents, and then right into the labor and mechanics minimum rate of pay. This is the header we see on each page. We have our classification code, the classification of labor and mechanics, and then it immediately goes into acronyms. So here is this wage benefit key: annuity, basic hourly rate, health and welfare, industry advancement fund, legal, labor management fund, pension fund, safety, supplemental unemployment insurance, SNL, which is SUI and legal combined, training, total hourly rate, vacation. So the ones that I have in the little orange triangle are kind of what you're looking at. So the basically hourly rate, health and welfare, and pension, and we can kind of see the columns that are applicable right underneath. Part of me almost wishes there was grid lines, not that it would be easier to read, but get your ruler out, make sure you're tracking the right column. And then other benefits, and then of course this last number is all of these rolled up for our total hourly rate. Now I have a few screenshots here that I want to show you that there's always going to be your basic hourly rate, health and welfare, pension, but not necessarily each labor classification is entitled to all of these various types of fringe benefits. Absolutely everyone should have a basic hourly rate, as we can see down here. The health and welfare, not necessarily. Again, it changes dependent on the description. And then we can see these under the other benefits. And this is where having this key handy is really helpful, because here we can see that the Boilermaker under the class code, this A0101, journeyman Boilermaker, they get an additional vacation and safety that is added to their basic health, basic hourly rate, health and welfare, pension, training, vacation safety. So there are additional. One example, let me hop to the next screen, is looking at like culinary workers. And you can see how their fringe is much less based on. So there's the point I want to make with this is to not assume that just because we have the key in these categories, that all of these are applicable for every labor category. So it's really critical that you are looking at the labor category in which that employee is performing and make sure that you are having all of the applicable components to reach their total hourly rate. So as we can see here for the culinary workers is baker cook, we have a basic hour, we have health and welfare, we have pension, and there really aren't any additional fringe benefits. And here you can see the elevator, again, we have the basic, we have the training, and then we have the L&M and vacation. So this does change dependent upon the classification. So please be careful when you are calculating this, that you are identifying the various and you are calculating that buildup of those additional fringe benefits. The last one here, I kind of wanted to pull up because for this example, we can see the iron workers and it has a little caveat here, see per diem note on last page, which I have done here. Per diem is established practice for this classification. This means that per diem is an allowable alternative to board and lodging if all criteria are met. Now, I don't really get into the discussion of remote locations here at all. That can be kind of a workshop all of its own for travel per diem and definition of remote as defined by the state of Alaska. You can find all of those definitions under the PAM 400. They're pretty well stated out if you're looking for that information. But here again, we can see that they have this note, and again, we have these in additional. So pamphlet 600 is fairly straightforward. I just have these three screenshots. Again, we have our classification. When you get into the PAM 600, you are going to have different areas where some of these classifications might have groups 1, group 2, group 3, and they're kind of designated by Roman numerals. And then they kind of define, and then again, some of those we're going to have where they designate that there is a hourly rate differential between north or south, depending on that location. So carefully look through. We have the labor classifications in yellow and read those notes and make sure that you're using the correct application. Last thing I want to point out while I have the screenshot in front of me is we have this class code, this classification code, this A0501 if they're a baker or a cook. These are the codes that we're going to be using in our certified payroll. And it's critical that you are using this because this is going to allow Department of Labor wage and hour division to be able to verify that this information is being applied correctly. So you absolutely have to make sure that you are using these designations for the state. So if you have a company and you're doing both federal and state projects, the classification number for prevailing wage for the federal are going to be different than those from the state. Just to give you that little added extra detail to pay attention as you are pulling together payroll. All right, so we kind of talked about that. So let's talk about the public construction process. Now, I know we called this entire presentation that, we're going to talk about the PAM 600, but really PAM 600 is pretty straightforward. Classifications, here's the basic base hourly rate and all of the fringe components, but it is all of the other things that fall under the realm of which PAM 600, or that little Davis-Bacon prevailing wage, Title 36 prevailing wage, get all those designations in there. It's the world in which it falls in and how you're using that and reporting all of those details. So we're going to kind of change gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about this public construction process. Now, this list here is, again, I pulled it right off the presentation given by the State Department of Labor last week, but I wanted to add some more information. I even stole their meme because it's really cute. All right, so here's the process. Contract is let for bid or sole source. Contractors submit bids, bid opening, contract is awarded. And this is where it all kicks in. And I kind of was like, hey, in green, this is where the primes or the contractors really had to start paying attention, but obviously you all are involved in everything. But there are extra components other than just submitting your bid and being awarded. There is the filing of the notice of award. There is paying of the filing fee for the notice of award filed. We have certified payroll that we now can file weekly or bi-weekly. We have change orders, and we're going to talk about that, and the notice of completion for the Department of Labor and Workforce Development review, and then we're going to have final payment and closeout. Now, I just wanted to let you know, because I keep mentioning the wage and hour training that I sat in last week that's done by the state. Here is a link from their website if you want to attend it. It's also worth attending if you have specific questions and you want to get, because they do have that well staffed. It's the third Tuesday of every month. You can simply call this phone number and ask for them to add you to the list, and you'll get the email the day before. And here's the website for that screenshot. All right, so let's talk about notice of award. Notice of award is submitted by the agency through the MyAlaska LSS online filing services. And we're going to get into this quite a bit. It must be submitted within 20 days of award. And it provides the department, and when they say the department in capital D, this is the Department of Labor, with the project information that includes the identity of the prime contract, the initial award amount, the bid date and award date, and expenditure of any federal funds, and review, processing, and approval or denial by department. All right, so that's the notice of award. Now we're going to get into the now. I feel like we're doing a 60s sitcom, the now of the now. So the now is the notice of work. So the notice of work when received, this is actually, and I shouldn't say when received, when you have that award notification, again, agency submits the NOAA, and prime submit the notice of work. Through the MyAlaska, same website, LSS online filing services. It must be filed before work commences, with the exception if you have an emergency contract, then you have that 14-day grace period of commencement of on-site construction work. So pay attention to your compliance requirements to get that done. This provides the department, again, this is Department of Labor, with the information for project location, contractor contact, identities of known subcontractors and contract amounts. And then the notice of work is not complete until any applicable filing fees have been paid. If somebody's like, hey, wait a second, filing fees, this is something that you want to know about as you're pulling the bid together, because now you have this cost instruction that hopefully you've identified in your overhead when pulling together bids for projects. So the calculation of filing fee is 1% of the total contract amount and there is a $5,000 maximum. So there's that not more than, up to or not more than 5,000. All right, so part of being able to file your now, that notice of work, sorry, for some reason, seeing the word now in all caps, is just triggering my inner child, which is just funny. I have to say it in a funny voice. But when you're filing that, there's a thing you got to do before you can actually hop into the My Alaska portal and get into that LSS online filing services. And if this is your first awarded state public construction contract, you have to obtain your Employment Security Tax Division, or contact the Employment Security Tax Division to get your Alaska Employer ID, which is not the same as your federal employer ID. So your EIN number, the only time you might see the F is to distinguish it between the Alaska and the federal, but the EIN number you've received from the IRS, and the state of Alaska Employment Security Tax Division is going to give you your Alaska employer account number. And this is for registering the quarterly taxes, but you do have to have both those numbers to be able to get into the LSS system. So I just have the link for the website here. I also found this incredibly helpful document here, and I've got the link for the PDF, these instructions, where it's giving you all the how do you do things. Here's the website. Here's where you can go to be able to do those activities. So again, you can see it was updated in April of 25. So really handy document. Kind of got it highlighted. I went to this website, which is here, and right down here at the bottom is apply for new Alaska employer account number. Now, you don't do this for every contract, just in case there's some confusion on that part. But if this is your first public award for, whether it's state or local, which is, again, municipality, borough, et cetera, city of, again, subject to state of Alaska statute, then yes, you do need to go through this process. All right, so now we have our FEEN, our federal EIN number, our state employment number. Now we can hop over, but before we do, just a little side note. I found a lot of great information on employment security tax on the website. I've got it listed here. Here's their contact information. You can see this online employer services. Again, it's kind of what I clicked, which also takes you here. But there was a lot of great information regarding that, and I just wanted to give this to you for your benefit. All right, so we got our federal EIN number, we have our Alaska ID number, and now we can hop over to My Alaska and get into the LSS online filing services portal. Now, I have to admit, I'm not a business owner, and as soon as they say My Alaska, I think of I filed for my PFD, that permanent fund, and that's where as soon as we say My Alaska website, that's where my brain goes. So it was kind of interesting because I had an account, I signed in, but I never really dug into the services tab to look at all of the applications for businesses. I have used the My Alaska for looking at employment and posting employment opportunities, and also for PFD. But if you're not familiar, again, if you're new to this world, sign in and look at all this. Click on the services tab and look at all the opportunity. Here's the website, myalaska.gov, my.alaska.gov. And from here, click on services. Let me give you that screenshot and we can start to see. So this is just the top of it. And we have Ashleware project. And if you scroll down to the bottom, we have the LSS online filing services. All right. Access the LSS online filing services portal to file the now notice of work, file employee payroll, pay a filing fee, or file the notice of completion. So when we click on this is what we see. And here's our options. And again, we can see file a notice of work. We can search contractors for submitted payroll. We can upload, submit certified payroll, employee lists. Now on this certified payroll, we're going to kind of break into it because depending on which state department has issued your contract, you might have a different process. And we're going to talk about that when I get to that screen. But through the My Alaska, the LSS portal, you can see the things that you can do. So I clicked on File Notice of Work. And this is the screen that popped up. Of course, I don't have a contract, so this is as far into it as I can get. And you can see here, notice work, and the first thing it asks, are there Alaska residents? And it moves forward. I was able to say yes, and then I could get screen 2, but again, that was as far as able to give you guys for those screenshots for that process of filing your notice of work. Change orders. Okay, kind of a weird, I wasn't sure where to put this slide, but we're going to take 2 minutes and talk about change orders. So first thing I do want to do is remind you that the threshold for the applicability of prevailing wages, the Little Davis-Bacon, the PAM 600, kicks in once we exceed the $25,000 threshold. If you have a contract and it's $24,900 and you know the agency, and based on your experience working with said agency and just dealing in the construction world, how likely are you to have a $100 change order that's going to kick your contract over? So it's that type of management oversight that you want to apply for these smaller dollar contracts, so that when you are building those prices, you aren't suddenly going to be hurting if you are going from a minimum hourly wage to a prevailing wage, because that change order took you over that size threshold. Please pay attention about it and think about it. If it's a $5,000 quick, one and done activity, and even a few change orders, you're not going to push that threshold, then that's your business determination to make of whether you are using those prevailing wages or you're using your normal hired wage rate for that labor category for commercial and residential projects. So I kind of wanted to pull that first. So change orders, just the process, the contracting agency submits online through My Alaska LSS online filing services that notice of award, and this is for changes as well as the initial notice of award. Prime contractors adds the increased or decreased dollar amount into the final contract amount and through that notice of completion. So don't forget, change orders can both increase and decrease that bottom dollar amount. If it does increase, it can mean additional filing fees are due, or if it decreased and you paid a filing fee, for whatever reason, there was a termination for convenience, to use the federal terminology. Something came up, something unexpected that delayed. However, that change order was initiated or has come into existence. Don't forget, there is that component. Again, the contracting agency submits that NOAA again. You need to pay attention that, because in that part of your notice of completion, you're going to make sure you have that final contract amount. So, and again, can mean additional filing fees or possible refunds are due, depending on whether it's an obligation or deobligation triggered by that change order. And again, just kind of cute, little tiny dingy named original contract and the big boat called change order. I just got to have our humor in this dry webinar. All right. So just a quick nod there. So let's get back on track. So let's talk about submitting certified payroll. Any of you groaning just at saying that phrase, submitting certified payroll? It's a lot of labor, and it needs to be done either weekly or biweekly. If you are filing your certified payroll biweekly, it doesn't mean you can't pay biweekly. You must pay weekly unconditionally. That is all through the PAM 100 and 600, that for public construction projects, employees are paid weekly. That is also the same for the Federal Davis-Bacon Act. All right, so all contractors, including subs and owner-operators, must file their own certified payroll. Again, weekly or biweekly, you pay weekly. Use proper classifications from the Pamphlet 600. From the training I sat in from the State of Alaska Department of Labor, they really kind of had that table thumping moment of how critical it is that you are using those PAM 600 labor classifications that I kind of pointed out, that first number just before the title, so that they can verify correctly. On like federal Davis-Bacon contracts, or certified payroll is submitted to the contracting office. Certified payroll for state of Alaska, SWA state of Alaska construction projects is submitted to the state of Alaska Department of Labor. Now, there are two different electronic filing processes. But before we jump there, you can file the form. This is the certified payroll state provided form, or you can use your own generated form that gives that information for the certified payroll. You can mail it, or you can personally, some sort of personal courier service to the Department of Labor Wage and Hour, or you can file electronically. So from here, we're going to have two different electronic portals. So we're going to use MyAlaska, the LSS portal for all contracts except for Department of Transportation and public facilities. The DOT&PF have to be filed through AASHTOWare. And a lot of that use of AASHTOWare is because a lot of the DOT&PF projects are going to have federal funds, which have different reporting requirements. And that data is gathered through that AASHTOWare system.
Hey, Jody, would you have a question in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Grace with Commercial Contractors A&R. She has a question on, just to verify, does that mean we can't do certified payrolls for our subcontractors?
Yes, you can. The prime contractor has that responsibility. So if you are kind enough to do certified payroll for them, make sure that since you contract, the primes have that responsibility that the subs are paying that correctly. Make sure that you are positive of the information that they're providing you for those paychecks are indeed what is really being paid, because no one wants that surprise enforcement division investigation. And that's fine. Yes, it should be subcontractors. The way this is written, and I pulled it out of that PAM 400, is just to let you know all hierarchy, all levels of tiers for subcontractors should be submitting. It's not like the prime, the first level sub, and then, the second and third don't have to. Yes, all tiers, all subcontractors, including owner operators, have to file certified payroll. That's fine. In fact, that's great if, as the prime, you are helping your sub, especially if they're a small company with that certified payroll. Okay. The one thing I want to throw out here is this note: read your contract. Our directions given for filing certified payroll. So if you're confused, am I doing it through the AASHTOWare or am I doing it through the MyAlaska LSS portal? There should be language in the contract. There should be boilerplate language on submitting of certified payroll and the application of prevailing wages. So look for that information if you are uncertain. All right. So submitting payroll, certified payroll. So let's talk a bit about when you have gaps, these no work weeks. So the state of Alaska filing no work weeks are not required under Title 36. However, the payroll numbers are to be consecutive. In other words, 1, 2, 3, 4. Otherwise, if not numbered consecutively, the remarks box on the statement of compliance may be used to explain a lapse in reporting certified payroll on a project. So for some reason, we're just going to use the example of we hit Christmas break, so there is no construction activity on that public construction project. Maybe you're doing work on commercial, so you still have payroll for employees. They just don't have any prevailing wage rate, and you are just following your numbering system. What you can do is then use that statement of compliance and then just note in the remarks box, project shut down from this date. And that includes payroll number. So just pay attention. They did mention that when they see a lapse in that numbering system, if you're following a numbering payroll counter from your payroll software, and that's what you're reporting, and they see a missed number, they are going to say, hey, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. So just a couple of different options. So again, no work weeks. You don't have to file necessarily the certified payroll. If you do not have any employees working on that particular public projects, you can just do the statement of compliance. And federal Davis-Bacon may require filing for no work weeks. I did not remember that off the top of my head, so I just kind of noted it here. Keep in mind, there are some differences between filing federal certified payroll and state. So if you ever have questions on that, you're always welcome to reach out to anyone in our office and we can help you with that. All right, so let's talk about the certified payroll form itself. Now, the state of Alaska does have this lovely Excel spreadsheet that you can download. I got the screenshot from the website right here. Here's the website link. So it's the forms, weekly certified payroll. Here's the Excel, here's the PDF, and here is the statement of compliance. Now, as far as the Department of Labor wage and hour is concerned, you can use any generated certified payroll form that you want. You can use their Excel spreadsheet. You can use the certified payroll generated by your payroll software if you have that available to you. They're not as particular. When you get into the AASHTO-ware, and I am not going to talk about that now. We'll talk more about AASHTO-ware here, upcoming other slide. They have a couple of different options that you can submit to kind of try to make submitting easier. So there's a pretty allowable as long as all of the appropriate information is provided. So just a couple things I wanted to call out. Again, this is the Excel document that I pulled down. I just kind of grabbed the top half of the document so we could talk about this. So obviously you have the contractor name, checking whether you're a contractor subcontract, the contractor address, phone number, contractor license, week ending, payroll number, agency project, Department of Labor project, project name, location, contract amount, work, estimated completion date. Here
Jody?
now, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, really quick question.
Yeah.
Raylan with Minutes and Painting is asking, is certified payroll required in all prevailing wage jobs? Are there any exception like the borough works, etc.?
Short answer is yes. The best answer is it depends. If you are doing public construction within the state of Alaska, prevailing wage is going to apply. If you're putting a bid in, let's say the North Slope Borough, they still have to follow procurement process under the Alaska Administrative Code, and that does include prevailing wages. If they have an exemption where maybe they received grant funds for their specific project from a non-governmental source, and maybe it was local, I don't know, I'm making something up, but then there might be an exception. The easiest way to do is assume prevailing wages are applicable for all public construction projects. And I'm using the word public to delineate from those commercial or residential, those private owners. So again, who's the owner, government or private industry or private individual. If they're, oh, excuse me a second. If your bid documents do not address prevailing wage, then you as the industry, you as the contractor, even that potential subcontractor, you have that due diligence requirement to say, hey, is this subject to prevailing wages? I do have a line in one of the screenshots that says the Department of Labor will enforce prevailing wages even if agency neglected to have that documentation in their bid packets or specifications. So yeah, the most correct answer is depends on the circumstance, but I would say 99 point something times, yes, the prevailing wages. If again, the best thing is to do that due diligence when you're looking at that bid project and you're starting to work on it, is clarifying questions are so critical. And that's one of them. Is this a prevailing wage project? and which prevailing wage is applicable. So again, if there's federal funds, it's possible that that might be applicable for that project versus the PAM 600. But that is up to uh, the contracting officer, the contract specialist, to make sure that they are giving you that correct information so that you can then bid with the correct knowledge and not have any unhappy surprises after the fact. All right, I'm going to have to speed this up real quick. So just a couple of things I want to point out on the certified payroll form. Here it says name, social security number, permanent domicile address for the employee. Department of Labor wants the full social security number. The federal certified payroll only wants the last 4 for identification purposes, but the state does require to have the entire string for the full social security number. Again, make sure that you're using the correct classification code from the PAM 600 here and our labor. And then you must use the employee's permanent domicile address, no PO boxes or rural routes accepted. If the physical address really is, number 3 milepost 3.5 Parks Highway, etc., that's fine. I know some of our rural addresses are a little crazy in this state. But again, it's really critical that you're not using PO boxes. So for those of you that do the certified payroll, you want to make sure that you have that permanent domicile address. All right, so this is the actual payroll breakdown. We have the hours of the work, the date of the billing, day of the week, total hours worked, paid, gross amount earned, all of our deductions, total deductions. If you have any other for garnishments or other, maybe there was a payroll advance or something, and so it was covered elsewhere, or garnishment for state requirement for garnishments, etc. Total deductions, net amount paid, and check number issued. Now, again, whichever format you use, as long as this data is there in full and complete. However, this second form, and this is the file number 2, the sheet number 2 in the Excel spreadsheet, this has to be a statement of compliance. You have to use the state's form. So make sure that you are using that because they are looking for the completeness here. So when I talked about the no work weeks and the statement of compliance, and there's a remarks section right here, no work weeks, you can use this. So make sure that all of these areas in yellow that you've completed this in full, and this 2 pieces must be submitted for as part of that certified payroll. So again, we have the actual payroll data and we have our statement of compliance. And it's really critical that those are signed and get your signature, name, and title. All right, so owner operators. A little bit of designation difference, a little bit of confusion. So owner operators are independent businesses. They're not 1099 employees. And that distinguishment between the definition of an independent business versus a 1099 employee, sometimes it feels like it's splitting hairs, but it's really very critical that you are paying attention and that you are doing your full due diligence as you are working with subcontractors, that you are actually working with independent businesses. An owner-operator can be a sole proprietor, a partnership, or even a limited liability company, but they cannot be a corporation. And why they have limited liability companies, because you can have a single member LLC or even a dual member, say, for example, husband and wife LLC, and they have chosen to file their taxes as if they are a sole proprietor, and it just rolls it into their own personal income, a self-generated income versus filing separately like a corporation where your personal taxes are filed and then your business taxes are filed. So that's the designation. Contractual rates are higher than prevailing wages. And part of that, and that's a good point of thought, is because owner operators should be paying and calculating self-employment taxes that are done on a different rate than what employee payroll taxes are calculated. And by that, I mean just that, the FICA, federal withholding, ESD, union dues, etc. Okay. The independent business has appropriate contractor's license, insurance, and workman's compensation. Now, I know the state of Alaska for businesses, you don't necessarily have to have workman's comp unless you have a single employee. But everything that I've found looking, trying to confirm this, says in the construction realm, yep, you got to have workman's comp. I do know there's owner operator packages for workman's comp that are calculated at a different rate than if you have employees. Again, workman's compensation is a whole nother topic. And maybe we should note that Z for our next quarterly is get someone to talk about workman's comp. But again, these are indicators that you have an independent business, not just an employee that's like, yeah, I'm doing my own thing. Or you're trying to avoid employee taxes and you're calling them an independent contractor and you're just going to pay them a lump sum check and not payroll. So independent businesses, owner operators do have to report progress payments as opposed to payroll checks. That's one of the distinguishers between an owner operator. They may not pay themselves unless they have a profitable project, rolling that back into their business operations. But they do have to report progress payments in lieu of payroll checks. On the certification form, a couple of notations. Note owner operator across the deductions line, and this dispatch of 00 must be paid for each reporting period. And I will be honest, I'm not sure what that referred to, but again, I pulled that right off of the Department of Labor website. So again, you can attend their event on that third Tuesday, third Wednesday incident for those specific questions. All right. Prevailing wages after operating expenses are removed. So again, there's still that threshold as you, the owner operating, paying yourself what you should, and then looking at those contractual rates and contractual matters. Now, there is that concept of owner operators that I don't have to pay prevailing wage because I am an owner operator, and maybe I'm going to pay myself less to be more price competitive so I can get my foot in the door. For that mentality, just a couple of notes. Again, here, they're looking at what you're making, prevailing wages after operating expenses are removed, and they're looking at, are you paying yourself sufficiently? But the catch-all is, say you and your brother are the owner operators, you have a partnership and you are doing your thing, and suddenly brother is kidnapped by aliens and you have to bring in another body to complete your scope of work. The moment you bring in another body, congratulations, you have an employee, and you should have been, that employee gets paid prevailing wages. If you as the owner operator really didn't calculate your own labor expenses at least that minimum for the prevailing wages, and then of course figure out your fringe benefits as an owner operator, you could be at an immediate profit loss because now you're paying out higher than you anticipated for a labor cost. Should you, and this is kind of a heads up to prime contractors, should you have a subcontractor that is not truly an independent business, it doesn't meet the litmus test of, contractor's license, insurance, workman's comp, suddenly, if Department of Labor, and I have learned a lot more about this on the federal level, suddenly you have an employee that wasn't paid the way they should have been paid, and the Department of Labor is going to make sure that employee is made whole. And if that subcontractor has an oops moment and there is an injury on the job site, and they did not meet that litmus test of an independent business, which means they're responsible for that injury from a workman's comp perspective, again, you suddenly have a new employee that you're now having to make whole. And then looking at that in retrospect and retroactively, those penalties, I can tell you on the federal level, can be up to triple damages. So please make part of your process of bringing subs on board, part of that contractual subcontracting process, that you are verifying that they have not expired, but have appropriate valid contractor's license, insurance, and the workman's compensation. And insurance, we're not talking about the state bonding fee, but we're actually talking about general liability. All right, so just kind of words of warning. I've heard many horror stories from all of the different federal Davis-Bacon training that I have done, but it's still applicable for little Davis-Bacon. Okay, so the independent, again, reports progress payments on certified payroll, etc., prevailing wage. Okay, let's move on. I'm running out of time. So owner operators, this is right out of the pamphlet 400. The address, again, shall be included in their owner operators who perform duties as laborers, mechanics, or field surveyors while working as a contractor subcontract on a public work project shall be included on their certified payrolls in the same manner as any other labor, mechanic, or field surveyor. However, an owner operator who performs duties is not required to pay themselves each reporting period, but shall report hours worked and actual payments, this is those progress payments, received under the terms of contract and the period covered by each payment. After deducting operating expense, the actual payment received by an owner operator duties as etc. Must meet or exceed the minimum prevailing rate of pay in the applicable classification for each hour worked in a public construction project. If an owner operator does have employees, they can use the same certified payroll for which they are performing their own level of effort. All right. Again, owner operators, more definitions defined under the PAM 400 pertaining to, again, general definitions. I'm just going to leave this for you just since we're kind of running out of time. But here is the statutory description and litmus test for that definition. All right, let's talk about submitting. We talked about creating a certified payroll, and then now we're going to kind of look at the two different certification processes. And again, I'm running out of time, so let me kind of pick this up. So we mentioned there's two different electronic portals if you want to submit electronically. We have the MyAlaska LSS application portal. We have that screenshot process here. We log in. Here's the website. We go down, we click the LSS application under the service tab, and we go upload, submit certified payroll. This is the screen popped up. And it's funny, this part is exactly the same as when you are submitting your notification of work. The only difference is here it says certified payroll versus the other. I saw this and I'm like, oh no, I clicked the wrong thing. That's the difference here, which one you are. But this first screen is exactly the same. All right. Submitting through the Accelerator project is a different process altogether. And keep in mind, this is because there's federal reporting compliance applications that the state has to provide the federal since they have received federal DOT, EPA, BIA funds. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. The Accelerator team does training sessions. You can see here's the website for it. They host a Zoom meeting every Monday morning to answer any questions. The staff on this is absolutely fantastic. Here's the Zoom link. They have it published right on their website. And they have a lot of great information on how to do this. So here's their website here, dot.alaska.gov/Accelerator. So here's their home page, and then right from the bottom, you can see this where I have the orange ring. If you click here, the Accelerator instructions can be found, and that's what's pulling up here. Here's the project submitting certified payroll. Here's what to do. So you need to tie you can use the MyAlaska user ID, so you don't have to have two different ones between MyAlaska and the Accelerator. So information here, new contractor login process. They have all these little great, can just click on each one, the little FAQs with links to the various questions that you might have. Again, I am not going to go into a lot of detail. Truly, their team does a great job with these Monday morning meetings. All right, notice of completion. So we kind of retrack in our whole process here. The agencies filed that notice of award. We filed our notice of work. We've been filing our all of our certified projects, or certified payroll. Our project's complete. We are now into that notice of completion, or the NOC. Prime contractors file the NOC via My Alaska LSS. We're seeing a trend here for where you're filing these notifications. The updated project information includes the final contract amount and the final subcontractor list, because maybe you needed a new subcontractor or somebody else wasn't able to perform and you had a switch of subcontractors from when you had pulled your bid and what you thought you're going to start. Okay, so final amount, final subcontractor list. You might have to, the prime might have to pay any additional fees if they're based on the change orders. That notice of completion review. Now, this is where the agency kicks in, or the Department of Labor. Once the Wage and Hour Office receives verification from the contracting agency of notification of completion of the final contract amount, the project is reviewed for compliancy. So they're going to go through and make sure you've done everything that you've supposed to, and they're going to be absolutely making sure that all of those payrolls are done. They're going to verify the final contract amount. They're going to pull all the project file, make sure it's completed, and Wage and Hour asks agencies to withhold up to 10% on Little Davis-Bacon Act projects. This is right off the information, or PAM 600, Title 36, until the department approves the NOC. And they do this to ensure that the primes have paid all of their subcontractors and that the subcontractors are paying their employees the correct hourly prevailing wage. Again, primes are responsible for their subcontractor, and the contractor submits the approved NOC to the agency for final payment. So yeah, so if you have those funds being withheld and you are truly done, here's your last step to receive final payment. The notice of completion, there is a website if you are looking for, especially if you are a sub, looking to see if that has all been submitted. I just wanted to provide this link for your information. So there is this public access where they can, you can search by project or contractor name to see if those notice of completions have been filed. Real quick, investigations, audits, and enforcements. So all contractors are afforded due process. And again, all contractors, this is the prime and sub. The prime contractor and the contracting agency are copied in all office correspondence. If the Department of Labor receive an entry of appearance from an attorney, the prime and agency are still copied in all official correspondence. I thought about not really talking about it because the screenshots I have are very thin on the topic, but enforcement investigation audits are an absolute compliance. You know, they're part of that teeter-totter. You're required to do it, and then the state is going to make sure that you are doing what you're required to do. And if the case of you're not doing what you're doing, then you're going to trigger an investigation. Or if an employee reports that they're not being paid appropriately, again, that's going to trigger an investigation for that Department of Labor. The Wage and Hour Enforcement team is going to investigate based on those claims. When the contractor fails to meet its obligations under the Title 36, unpaid amounts and prevailing wages and per diem are withheld and dispersed from the prime contractor. So again, there's that responsibility of the prime that your money could be held up if your sub isn't doing. So for those primes that are submitting certified payroll, I guess that's one great way of making sure that they really are doing what they're supposed to do. The ultimate penalty for violations can be debarment from public instruction up to 3 years. Now, there is a lot when we start talking about investigation, audits, and enforcement. So instead of trying to take up your time on that now, because again, that could be an entire another topic, I just wanted to give you look at pamphlet 400. Here's the section 36.05.30, authority, investigations, hearing, regulations, and enforcement. I did read through all of that. It's pretty straightforward, and it's going to give you those processes and those triggers. And as a business owner, business manager, if you are involved, employees for public, you should have somebody in the company that's very familiar. Project managers should have at least read this once and understand so that they can make sure that the employees are being paid correctly as an internal audit. All right, so here's where you can find out more. Again, here's the link to the PAM 400. Here's that link. And section 3610-125 is enforcement. And then article 4 of the PAM 400 goes into the investigation and hearings. And really the language on it isn't horrendous. Just the last couple bits, almost completely done here. Noteworthy items. Contractors must maintain accurate employment records for 3 years. I did not take the time to look up how long that you have to maintain your records for federal Davis-Bacon, but make sure that you are maintaining those records and that you have them either electronically, especially that payroll certification, for that 3-year time. Contractors must be licensed to bid and or work, and electrical and mechanical administration license are required. Just a little heads up. Projects funded with mixed state and federal monies may pay the higher of the state fed rates. If you get a solicitation and it's given you the Title VI, the PAM 600 and the federal wage determination, that's not your job to decide. That should be clearly outlined why you've received both, and guidance should be clearly defined in the solicitation document. I have seen that before. It was quite a while ago. It's not like you can pick and choose. You really need to make sure that that guidance is specifically clarified as to which prevailing wage that you are going to use. Even if the contracting agency fails to include the correct language in the bids or specs of contract, the Department of Labor still enforces the statute and or regulations. So you as a business are required to pay your employees those prevailing wages when we're talking about public works contracts, even if the solicitation documents omit that. That's one of those things that are there by law. Even if omitted from the documents, you have that responsibility. And again, I'm pounding the table. This part's important. Do your due diligence. And if you're not seeing any reference to it, ask the contract specialist before you submit that bid. Don't think about it after the fact. All right. Phew, that was a lot, guys. I'm down to just a couple minutes left. Do you have questions? Well, if you're like me and you think of the questions like 10 minutes after the webinar closes, or, half an hour after you leave the doctor's office, here's how you can follow up with us. Here is the contact information for our team, for the Alaska Apex Accelerator staff, for both in Anchorage and the Fairbanks. Let us know if you have questions on this, how we can help. We're happy to schedule appointments if you want to go over more information. Feel free to check in with the various state, both the AstraWare training, if you're filing via AstraWare, or even for the training provided by the Department of Labor on that wage, prevailing wage that they do on a monthly basis as well. All right, deep breath, everyone. We've made it to the end. Z, are there any questions? Oh, you're muted, dear.
Sorry.
I know, it's the details, huh?
What I was saying is I don't see anything in the chat, but if folks want to unmute themselves, please do so now. Ask away.
I'm sure we got 4 minutes.
While folks are thinking of their questions, I can go ahead and share the rest of my presentation.
Oh gosh, I didn't save you any time at all. Go ahead.
Oh no, that's all good.
Let me stop sharing my screen. All right, see.
Sounds good. Okay, let's see. So a couple things that I wanted to talk about. As always, if you are not already subscribed to our quarterly newsletter or just our newsletters in general, please let Brittany Hoffert know. You can just message them in the chat and or put your email in the chat and say that you want to be subscribed. We do send out a lot of information that we believe is useful not only to our certified DBEs, ACDBEs, but also to anybody that, all the folks that work in this world. So that includes prime contractors, unions, our stakeholders, our partners. So yeah, if you're not subscribed, please let us know. We will add you to that list. So we do have 2 more quarterly trainings left for the year. I know they both say quarter 4. we kind of had a slow start to the beginning of the year, so we missed out on Q1. That's why in Q4 we're gonna have 2 trainings. So this is a good time. You know, earlier Jody was mentioning workers' comp, but this will be a good time to put in the chat or just let us know via email. What would you be interested in learning about? Between Jody and I, if we are not experts in the subject, we will find those experts, and we will have them present to all of you on the topic that, you know, if you really want to know, we will get those folks out there. So please, we have some time until, you know, August. So after construction season kind of starts to slow down, I know for some folks August is still kind of early in that world, but if you can think of anything between now and August, please let us know. Definitely appreciate it. Or of course, in September. Let's see. Oh, and I just want to make a note. You can always register for the trainings even without knowing the topic. And we will, of course, reach out to folks as we come up with the topic and with further information. Grace, I do see your comment here for next quarterly training, new certified federal form if possible. Definitely. I think I need a little bit more context, but if you wouldn't mind emailing me, but otherwise, for sure, whatever we can get to y'all, we will do our best. So one last thing that I wanted to kind of mention. So we have an upcoming event. For those of you who are not aware, our office is putting on the Alaska Construction Career Day event over at the Alaska State Fairgrounds on Thursday, May 8th. Oh my goodness, it is coming up. We cannot wait. So if you've never been to this event before, if you don't know what we're talking about, this event is geared for high school students to get young people to want to join the trades. So this event is full of hands-on activities, as you can see here, and general vendors, and then outside hands-on activities. During this time, students will have an opportunity to walk through, talk to experts, and then hopefully for those who are literally about to graduate in May, some of them will walk away with a job application. We're going to have a good amount of all the unions and apprenticeship schools out there, but we also have some prime contractors and other stakeholders that will be at the event. So yeah, if you have a high school student in your life and if you're interested in having them come out, of course, ASD and Matsu, they will have their own buses coming to the event through their schools. But if your student is, you know, a rural student or an alternative school or homeschool, please chat with me. But anywho, my email is here at the bottom of the flyer. And of course, all of you are here, so you pretty much have my email. But if you want to chat with me about this event, please do so now. The sooner the better. But yeah, we look forward to this event. And if you go onto the website, there is a really good video that kind of shows an overview of what the event is about, and it's from last year, so it's pretty recent. And here's how to contact us. Here's my email, here's Brittany's email, and here's Jody's email. And I do see we have a couple more things. Regarding the DBU reports to get reimbursements, do you know if there is any funding this year? Good question, Tony. So for those who are DBEs or in the chat or in the virtual room today, I still have not heard back from Federal Highway Administration, but please know we technically did receive the funding for the year. It's just the problem is down to the Fed Aid office. There's nobody to, or there's a lack of staffing to push the money towards us. So we're still operating business as usual between Brittany and I. We're collecting the reimbursement forms. We're we're looking to make sure that they're accurate for all the information that we would need. And as soon as we get those funds, we're sending all the current applications over to our finance folks. Let's say like last year, I kept saying, I feel like I'm hearing myself deja vu. I know I said this last year a lot as well, but if we do get to like August time and we're still not hearing anything, I will definitely let all of you know. And I would rather you not take all that time to put together a reimbursement. So just please know that we're on it. We're trying. but any information that I have, I will definitely pass on to all the certified DBEs as soon as possible. Closing, if anybody has any questions now, Jody, Brittany, and myself will stay on. So please, if you want to ask us questions, you can stay on for a second and ask away. Otherwise, huge thank you to everybody who showed up. Huge thank you to Jody, obviously, for putting together an amazing presentation. The copy of it will be on our website later today. And Brittany, if you wouldn't mind putting the link in the chat, or I can do so here in just a second. But otherwise, everybody, thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. And again, if you have those questions after the fact, yeah, absolutely. Reach out to either one of us and we'll go from there.